while back, at an academic conference, I went to a talk by a linguistics professor. Her topic: Why Culture Matters in Foreign Language Classes. Textbooks, she said, have reduced culture to little side notes about foods, dances, and holidays. But that, she argued, treats culture like trivia, and culture is not trivial, it's essential. She was adamant: language opens the door to culture, and in a global society, understanding other cultures is a moral imperative. The world is becoming increasingly intolerant, she said, so we must teach students to be more multicultural and more progressive. That's nice, I thought. I wonder how many cultures she's actually lived in. After the talk, I went up to her with a question. You spoke about cultural understanding, but what if a culture has aspects that offend students? Can you give me an example? So I did. When I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Thailand, I told her, I taught English at a local teachers' college. In my classes, I had both students and professors. All were women, all were educated. One night I came to class angry, which in Thailand is already a cultural faux pas. But my students asked me why. I told them my best friend, another volunteer, had just found out that her boyfriend was cheating on her. They looked at me, confused, silent. And? One finally said. What do you mean, and? Well, that's what men do. That's what men do. Okay, so you're telling me if your boyfriend or husband, if your boyfriend or husband cheated on you, you'd be okay with that? Well, yeah, of course. Why not? And they all nodded. The other day, one said, I went to my boyfriend's apartment. He answered the door, and a girl was standing behind him in her underwear. I told him I'd come back later. And you were fine with that? Yeah, as long as he loves me first. Again, nods in agreement. All right, I need a show of hands. Is anyone not okay with that? Out of 20 professional women, I counted, only one raised her hand. The one professor who was not Thai, Aiko, the Japanese teacher from Tokyo. These weren't farm girls, I told the professor. These were professional, educated women like you. She was appalled. Well, she said, if a culture is like that, that culture sucks. Oh, okay. Which then raises the question. You can be multicultural, you can be progressive, but can you be both? I ask my students this question and I walk them through the logic. Universities, I tell them, make you take foreign language classes because, as the Modern Language Association puts it, in a global society, higher education must teach students to be less ethnocentric, less patronizing, less Manichaean in judging other cultures. This is what it means to understand other cultures, or be multicultural. So I asked them, if multicultural means you are less ethnocentric, less patronizing, less Manichaean in judging other cultures, and since many students don't know, I define Manichaean, dualistic, thinking in terms of right and wrong, good and evil. Do you agree that we should be multicultural? Do you still agree? Do you still agree? Do you still agree? Usually, half the class nods yes for the bullfighting. We should not judge that culture. It's their culture. But I lose another fourth with the Yama sacrifice, and they all draw a line with child marriage. Still, for good measure, I push them over the edge with this slide. Do you still agree we should be multicultural as the MLA defines it? My point is that we all have a line, and this is the first problem with multiculturalism. It's impossible to live out. The farther you move from your own culture, say a Westerner living and working in the Far East, the more likely you are to confront practices and perspectives that offend you. This is nothing new. The expat has long lived the 4 stages of culture shock. After arriving in her host country, she enjoys a brief honeymoon. Everything is new, different, exotic. But soon she encounters customs and beliefs she can't stomach. She grows frustrated, even hostile, and eventually she either leaves or learns to adjust and then adapt. But to truly adapt, she is told, she must go from placing her own culture in the center to placing it as one among others. She must go from placing her own culture in the center to placing it as one among others. The problem is that some customs and beliefs go beyond the merely different and the exotic, and offend not her taste, but her ethics. Can she truly set aside her sense of right and wrong to become a global citizen? So, the flip side. When we speak of multiculturalism, it almost always comes packaged with progressive ideals. Daniel Yankelovich, cited in that MLA report, writes that with all the wicked problems the world faces, we must revive a strong sense of right versus wrong. Moral philosopher Martha Nussbaum goes further. She argues that the humanities should promote universal human rights and move away from local ethics. But here's the rub. We might call this stance progressive. Certainly, walking the halls of my university, we tend to find a dogma that leans left, that defines the common good in terms of social justice and equity. But to speak of progress at all, what are we saying? Progress assumes direction. It's a step toward a fixed goal, an advance. It promotes change in the name of moving forward, originally in Christianity. This is also nothing new. Nietzsche famously complains that Western thought is saturated with Christian assumptions. Other contemporary authors agree. For 2,000 years, the Western ethos has been steeped in Christian assumptions. In fact, we might say that human rights, equality, and democracy, as we understand them now, were only possible after Christianity redefined them, and that Nussbaum's political liberalism and universal ethics keep Christianity's moral language, but drop the God behind it. So whether we call it the triumph of Judea over Rome, or the immanentization of the eschaton, or modernity's surrogate forms of transcendence, there is a sense that progressivism shares Christianity's apocalyptic urgency, but with a new, secular theology. It was this understanding, in fact, that provoked Maureen Dowd to call American progressives modern Puritans. And truthfully, that was my experience living overseas. Westerners, especially Americans, are very multicultural, until you disagree with them. As C.S. Lewis points out in Mere Christianity, we all want progress. We just don't agree on direction. Progress is chaotic and contradictory within and among cultures. One culture's progress is another's regression. Yet when we speak of progress, we speak of a line. We say that a wrong should be made right. We engage in dualism. We think in opposites. We are, in fact, Manichaean. And here lies the second problem. Progress sounds neutral, but it never is. It advances from non-good to good. It requires a value judgment that is, by definition, linear and universal. So though in our academic magisterium we may affirm that we are beyond good and evil, that the compass has no true north, that all truth is local, that power is knowledge, and the postcard is illegible, we still ask other cultures to adopt our sense of dignity and universal values. We frame premises with, if we agree that, when in fact much of the world does not. Many years ago, I taught English at a school that prepared international students for American universities. My classes were filled with students from Western and non-Western countries. On the first day, I asked that typical first-day question, why do you want to study in the U.S.? The first student to my right was a young Saudi Arabian man named Mohammed. Next to him sat his wife. I asked Mohammed, so why do you want to study here? He answered, I want to get a degree so I can go back to my country and get a better job so that I can afford another wife. Next to him, his current wife nodded in agreement. The Western students in my class gasped out loud, to which Mohammed angrily said, why do you react that way? I'm sick of people telling me my culture is wrong, and when I ask why it's wrong, they have no answer. So I ask you, multicultural progressive, what would your answer be?
Dr. Mondi, he has a PhD in a field that ends with the word studies.